Hello and welcome to the Introduction to Magnum training video. We're going to start with some of the basics and work our way through the different menus and programming, and then get into a little more advanced programming and some tips and tricks and also troubleshooting within Magnum. Now if you at home want to follow along, or just for basic practice and editing files offline or on an airplane or something like that, a good way to do that was a program called VirtualBox. So we're going to download that. You go to the website virtualbox.org and you go to downloads, and then you select your platform, either Windows or for a Mac. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to do that one. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And then you also want this VirtualBox extension pack, and that's good for either Windows or Macs. And download that. And then you want to figure out what version of Magnum do you want to work with. So if you want the one that's on your truck, if you log into your normal server on the truck, in this case it's 94, so it's 1025.5/Magnum, and then you log in admin to get in. And you go to help out here and you go to about, and this tells you the version of Magnum that you're currently working with. So the other thing you want to pay attention to is the version of web config that's on here. And you can always load an older version of Magnum onto the VirtualBox. So if you have 1.14. whatever on your VirtualBox, and you can still load 1.13 or one of the older versions on there, you can see it and work with it. But you have to be very careful when you load it onto a system what that system actually has on it. And the other thing that'll matter is the web config. You can have two slightly different versions, but if the web configs match, you can still share files that way. So we know that this is 1.14.3, so that's what we want to go get. So in your company Gmail account, if you go up here to these little boxes and you go to Drive, Google Drive, and click on Shared with Me, there's a folder here, Magnum VMs. So let's go into that folder. And this has the different versions of Magnum. It has most of the ones that we're currently using. So here's this one, this 1.14.3 clean version. And we're going to download that. And just save that to my desktop. Now let's go install everything. So on my desktop now, I've got this VirtualBox folder. I click on that and double click on the icon that's in there. Continue, install. And this password is just for my computer because I'm installing a new program. It's not associated with VirtualBox. Your computer may not have a password for installing programs. So I've got that, and then I also want this expansion pack, and I already have it installed on here, but just go through the process anyway. And again, I have to install that. Okay, so now we need to import the appliance, and that's what VirtualBox calls the virtual PC setup. So up here at the top of the screen, you go to File and Import Appliance, and then we can browse to it. And this is on my desktop, so here's this Magnum 1.14.3 clean. I'm going to import that appliance. I don't change anything, everything just comes in as it is. Now in order to get this to run properly, we need to set up the virtual network, otherwise it won't launch. So on a Mac, you hit Command and comma, and then you go, this brings up the VirtualBox General tab. You go to Network in here, and you go to Host Only Networks, and you hit this little green plus sign, and it creates this VBox Net 0. That's what you want. Now here it's a good idea to check it before you launch it. So once I clicked it once to highlight it, I go to Settings, and if there's anything in this gray area, that's something you have to correct before it will launch. And it can be something like if your computer doesn't have enough RAM. This is allocated with 4 gigs of RAM, sorry. It'll give you an error. So for example, if I was to move this outside of range, it comes up and says invalid settings detected. That's what you'd see in that little gray box. And if you hover your cursor over there, it'll tell you what the problem is that you have to correct. So you can move the arrow to get more in the range, but you do want it to be as fast as you can so that it runs properly, but you don't want to overload your system either. And I also want to check the network setting. This is set to host only adapter, and this VBox net 0. All of that is good, so I'm not going to make any changes. So from here I can click start, and this is going to launch a virtual computer inside your computer, and this will act as a server. So now if I want to see where it's at and what its status is, I can go to the web address of it, which is 192.168.56.101. But it gives me this bad gateway, so that means it's not ready. So the way I can get into that is if I go here to :2812 on there instead of the /magnum, that brings up Monet. And Monet shows me what's actually happening on the server right now. And you can do this on your truck as well. Again, when you go to this, the username and password are both admin, all lowercase. And this shows you the status that it's starting to come up right now, but it's not totally there. So what we want to really look at is the Magnum web config. And the not monitored just means it's not up yet, but they're all starting to come up. Some of the other things that are in here, like Zeus, for example. Zeus is the router control process. That's like device sync, status, route requests, lock protects, that kind of thing. You have Triton, and that's the client interface. So that's like control panels, advanced routes, quick routes, that kind of thing. And the other thing is this fake sys. We do want to launch that. And what that will do is simulate hardware so you can actually make routes on the system, even though there's nothing attached to this virtual box, but that'll make it simulated like it is. So now that we have all of that stuff up, this is starting to come up now. You see it says initializing instead of not monitored. And with these, the CPU speed is very important. If it's 12, it's actually maxed out. So 0 is where you really want it to be. This is running pretty hard right now because there's so many different processes. And if you see in the background, this just came up with a Magnum box. That means it's getting much closer to being ready. And I look at the web config now. Everything's at 0. Looks like it's getting pretty close to being ready. So let's go check on it again. And there we go. Now we have our login screen. And this at the top just tells me it's a clean licensed version. The username is password. Username is admin and password is admin. And I can log in, but there's nothing here. There's nothing actually in this system currently, so we have to upload a file to it. And that can be a config you grabbed off of your truck or another truck or some other file that you had if you want to edit it. So to import this, we go to admin, configuration management, import config, and we choose the file. And I grabbed one before from 94, so we can use that one. And then I'm going to start importing that config. Whenever you log into a system, on the home page here, devices are the devices that are physically attached to Magnum and to the system. So it has the EMR frame, which does the audio, the EQX frame, which does the video. And you also have all of your VIPs. This is showing panel status, but it's not really real time, so it's not for critical monitoring. Routes actually show routes in real time, so if someone was to route on a router head, you'd actually see it pop up here, and you would see everything that's going on, audio and or video, but it only stays on for a few seconds, so unless someone's actively routing, you don't see it. So once this gets done loading, we're going to start playing around and building a config.